Hello everyone. So the topic of today's video is duality, and in this case, we are actually discussing about the duality in religious sense or spiritual sense, where often the spiritual practitioners are presented or stumble upon the dualistic nature of the universe and the dualistic nature of our mind. So the duality as a topic, duality as a subject, has been discussed in many religious traditions, many spiritual practices. So we can even go back to many thousands of years in both Abrahamic and Hindu yogic traditions. So in both West and East, the duality has been presented as the separation between the godly nature and the human nature. And later on in the Hindu yogic tradition, there were many subdivisions. So for an example, we have this Advaita Vedanta, and the Advaita philosophy also unfolded around this duality topic. And then later on, Buddhism was founded by Buddha in nearly about 2500 years ago. So the Buddha coined this term duality in a different way according to his understanding. And then after several centuries, we had another great master, Jesus Christ. So he also emerged from Abrahamic faith, and he also brought this term duality into the context. So all the religious traditions in this way have presented their ideas, opinions in different ways for the duality. And in today's video, we are also going to talk about the duality in all these forms, but we give the greatest emphasis to the duality in Buddhist sense and also in other religious faith, in terms of other religious faith. So typically, if you look at the theistic views that actually are unfolded around theological concepts that unfolded around God concept. So basically all these teachings and religious practices, they speak about the separation between the godly nature and the humankind. So by practicing meditation, by doing prayers, by engaging in many different spiritual activities, aspirants from all these religious traditions, they try to attune themselves to the godly nature, or to resonate with the godly nature or the universe. So by doing so, they try to eradicate or get rid of the separation between the nature and themselves. However, if you are still in the gross level of your mind, you cannot be attuned with the godly nature. Only the subtle levels of your mind. So for an example, the mental states that we achieve through samadhis, jhanas, meditative attainments, only through them we can reach the godly nature. Only through them we can be attuned to the godly nature. Therefore, anybody who is interested in understanding the duality in these religious practices within the scope of these Abrahamic and yogic traditions, you need to engage in a spiritual practice and attain higher levels of consciousness. So thereby you can go beyond your limited perception, limited human consciousness, and then try to get the glimpse of taste of godly nature. So how the duality is usually discussed in Buddhist tradition? That's an interesting topic, and you know that when we discuss about the Buddhist tradition itself, the Buddhist tradition itself has several branches. So most people think that the most authentic form of Buddhism is the early school of Buddhism, which is Theravada. So in the Theravada tradition, if you take the Theravada Tripitaka, we don't find this duality term often mentioned in the Tripitaka. the duality term is not being discussed. Why? Because the Theravada Buddhism, or the earlier school of Buddhism, that the teaching in that school has been dedicated for basically to understand the Four Noble Truth and to also eradicate suffering, to be free from suffering, to be free from attachments. So that is the basic teaching. But when it comes to the philosophical understanding of how the universe works, how the human mind works, how the human mind and how the combination between human mind and the physical body works, then it's another beast, another story, and it's another level of understanding. So that kind of understanding was not made available to everybody, because that kind of understanding, that kind of realization can only work for certain individuals having higher capacities. So because of that reason, Gautam Buddha had dedicated or reserved the duality, the teachings on duality and non-duality only for certain disciples, not for everybody. And therefore, if someone wants to learn about the duality or non-duality as a concept or as a philosophical paradigm, then they need to study about the Mahayana Buddhism. And then the other branch of the Buddhism is called Tantrayana. So Tantrayana is a sub-school that comes under Mahayana. And in Tantrayana tradition, we also talk about the duality and the non-dualistic nature of the mind. So I just want to give a brief introduction at this point, and then we're going to discuss further in detail regarding the duality and non-duality in all of these traditions. So let's jump into this topic, duality, further. So now we are trying to understand the duality in terms of what we perceive from our conscious mind. So we often get to hear about things in different polarities, or things in opposite polarity. So for an example, when it comes to Tao, or so-called the natural way of living, we have this yin and yang quality. So the yin is essentially the darker side of a thing, and the yang is the light side of the thing. If you try to suppress one thing, the other one cannot sustain. So both of these yin and yang polarities find their balance in their mutual operation. So without this mutual operation and mutual understanding between the two polarities, a property cannot exist in this world. The world cannot exist. The universe cannot exist. Now, in addition to that, when it comes to, let's say, feelings, and also when it comes to sensations, we have this hot temperature, cold temperature, and then we have summer vacation, and also the winter period. Every day we have the daytime and also the nighttime. So we even in day-to-day life, we often find the polarities of different opposite polarities. So without this mutual operation, the existence actually cannot run or govern. However, our mind is actually tending to reject one polarity often in day-to-day circumstances. So for an example, if you are employed in a company, you always want to hear good about you from other people, right? And if you hear something bad about you, if you received negative feedback, then of course you will get agitated, you will get angry. And even in spirituality, let's say now when you have a very blissful meditative experience with tranquility, then you will be so happy about it. But during a dark night of the soul, when you are going through a lot of hardship and a lot of pain in your physical body, in your energy system, and then you are in dark without having any meditative light, then you get frustrated, you get depressed. So that is due to the attachment to one polarity, because we are so attached to the good side of everything. But the spirituality or the universe or the existence, even the materialistic world, cannot exist without both of these polarities. So this we have to understand first. And you don't need to have any meditative experience to understand this basic information. However, now let's say you are a normal individual who only wants to explore the possibility of your mind, and you want to undertake a spiritual adventure. Then you need to go one step forward, one step further. Then you start to think about, okay, what is beyond the dualistic nature of this world? We have good, we have bad, and as long as we are here about good things about us, then we become happy. But when bad things happen to us, when things are getting adverse, when things in our life are getting challenged, then we come to experience suffering. We suffer because of that. So this is usually the starting point for many aspirants to work on a spiritual path. But some people, due to the natural evolutionary process, they can also get into or dive into the spirituality. But for most of the time, the suffering induced by these polarities in this world is the main reason to undertake a spiritual venture. So due to the nature of the duality, we often have to sway between these opposite polarities. And on the other hand, sometimes we need in a situation where we have to make a difficult, we have to take a difficult action, or difficult, we have to make a difficult choice. Then we often struggle with this black and white thinking, because we often have to deal with trade-offs, and we have to sometimes compromise one of our um, you know perhaps a thing that is so close to us, perhaps a thing that we are often identified with. So we have to compromise. So the duality also hits hard in such a situation. And on the other hand, due to the struggling with these extremes, due to the struggling with these both polarities, we often have this non-stop consciousness, non-stop thinking, or the overthinking process. So eventually that also results a form of suffering. And at the end of the day, the suffering for all, the main reason for suffering, main reason for all sufferings, main reason for all desires, main reason for all the struggles in this world is due to the separation between ourselves and the divinity, ourselves and divine, ourselves and God. So once we understand that, and once we fully commit towards achieving this goal, then at some point we will come to the ultimate realization, where we put the stop mark, we put the full stop for the dualistic thinking, dualistic suffering, and dualistic way of thinking once and for all. However, all the things that I have mentioned right now can be understood with your conscious mind, because using your conscious mind, we understand these basic things with the help of five senses. So the perceivability of your conscious mind can easily understand the dualistic nature of the materialistic things, as well as the usual things that we encounter in our day-to-day life. Yeah, and now in the given figure, we see the structure of our mind. Well, some people argue that our human mind, the human mind doesn't exist. The human mind is in fact a result of a thought process. Well, likewise, different people give different interpretations to the nature of mind, or the structure of mind, or the working principle of mind. So there is nothing wrong about it. But for the sake of analysis, here we are using a hypothetical division to explain the nature of mind. So in this hypothetical division, this is actually quite similar to Carl Jung's hypothesis. So in this hypothetical division, the topmost layer is what we call the conscious layer. And this conscious layer is a result of the so-called 5 aggregates according to the Buddhist tradition. So the conscious mind is actually running with the help of 5 senses. So we have ears, nose, mouth, and the skin, and also eyes. So that from all these 5 senses, we get signals. We identify ourselves with the external objects. So that this identification results a series of thoughts, a chain of thoughts, or what we can call the consciousness. So mainly the human mind is run by, the day-to-day mind is run by the topmost layer called the conscious layer. So this is what most people refer to as mind. But then the question comes, when we do meditation, when we dive deeper into our consciousness during meditation, then we see different kind of experiences. We see different levels of samadhis. For an example, we see very bright shining golden light, and sometimes bright white color lights. And these experiences, these blissful experiences, can be jhanic states according to Buddhist tradition, or samadhi states. So where do these states come from? If the according to the usual explanation, according to the usual definition, the mind is said to be the result of thought process. Then where do these meditative experiences come from? So that is the question we should ask ourselves. So the answer lies in that answer actually leads us to think that the mind is not simply the thought process. There are more layers, there are deeper layers to the mind beneath the thought process. So these the deep layers, the beneath the under layers, are what we refer to as the subconscious and unconscious layers. So through these subconscious and unconscious layers, we see our meditative samadhis, we see our jhanic states, so we see our samadhi states. And anybody can tap into these samadhi states or deep meditative absorptions through meditation. So because of that reason, we cannot simply deduce, or we cannot simply reduce the operation of mind to the conscious layer or thought process. So the structure of the mind is more complicated than the running thought process. So that is what you see in this diagram. Now the next question is, how usually a meditator will traverse through these layers? Well, at the beginning of the meditation, everybody is busy with their thought process. It's not that easy to calm our conscious layer. It's usually agitated, and it's mixed up with all the memories, day-to-day memories, the memories from the recent history, and also the imagination that you have for your, let's say, some future task and the tasks at hand. And apart from that, you might be suffering from depression, anxiety. So all these impulses are available in the conscious layer of mind. But in any case, if you are able to calm down, slow down your conscious layer of your mind, slowly, the impulses and the busy nature of the conscious layer will diminish. And through the disappearance of this thought process, then the sudden illumination and all other meditative insights will come into the surface, will come into the conscious layer of your mind. And if you are a great meditator, and if you have practiced your meditation for several number of years, then you will have an opportunity to bring your fruition mind or the meditative light, or what we refer to as jhanas, to the conscious layer. And this is where you most of the time get yourself absorbed or immersed in the meditative experience or the fruition mind, so that you become one with the entire existence. That's how you feel during these type of meditative insights. But then if you want to progress, if you want to go further, then you need to be aware of your defilements. You need to be aware of the mental fetters, and these mental fetters and defilements should be slowly eradicated or cleansed, so that you can bring the light from the conscious layer to the subconscious layers, and then finally to the last layer of your mind, the darkest layer, which has all these hidden mysteries and past life information and many other personal traits. So bringing in your light, you can clean all three layers of your mind. And this is what we basically do in Buddhist meditation practice called vipassana. So the whole purpose of bringing this light to your entire mind, all three layers, is what? It is in fact what we do in your enlightenment process. And at the end of the enlightenment, when you reach upon the enlightenment, you will have a pure, cleansed mind that is attuned to the godly nature. So that is the importance of bringing light, or bringing the fruition mind to the all three layers of your consciousness, or all three layers of your mind. But then coming back to the main topic, the topic of our video is the duality and the non-duality. So how bringing this meditative light, or the divine nature, or the godly nature, or the fruition mind affects our way of thinking, affects how we look at the things in this world. Well, now, as I told you, the main reason for our dualistic thinking, it actually happens the conscious layer. It happens in the conscious layer. It is where you have this ever-running thought process. That is where you most of the time identify yourself with black and white, hot and cold, and all these polarities, the things with different polarities, things with the opposite polarities. But when you bring this divine nature or the fruition mind to your meditative experience to your mind, what happens is it can flush out certain layers of your mind, starting from, let's say, the conscious layer, and then this flushing slowly happens from the conscious layer to the subconscious, and it can even go to the unconscious layer, where the dualistic nature will slowly start to diminish, because more and more you are getting yourself attuned to the divine nature or the godly nature. Then only your mind will become free from the dualistic views. So that's how the meditation experience can really help you change the viewpoint or your perspective about life, and also your surrounding, and also the way how you look at the things in this world. And this, in fact, more and more you have this purity, or the fruition mind, or the divine nature imbibe throughout all these, through traversing through all these layers of your mind. Then we say that the separation between you and the God, or the universe, or the divine nature, starts to diminish. It ceases to exist, so that you become one with the divine nature or the universe. That is how you becoming free from the dualistic way of thinking, the dualistic nature of your mind. So likewise, the dualistic nature will go away in most of your life situation and in most of your uh, incidents in your life, and also how you look at things in this world. The next question is, where do we get this um, the quality and also the creative nature? Because the fruition mind, whether you attain it from samatha or vipassana, in any way, the fruition mind that you arrive, it has some essential qualities. So one of these qualities is the creativity. In addition to the non-dualistic thinking, the creativity is another quality. So a person who has attained this meditative experience, he can, for an example, go into these meditative states in the early morning, and then he will have a very fresh date without having all these mental troubles, problems, and all, the things that bothers you. So you can be free from all these mental struggles, the mental activities, if you can go into this the fruition state. So in addition to the non-dualistic view, you have these kind of added advantages as well. So to summarize what we have discussed up to this point, so first we discuss about the dualistic nature of our conscious mind, and then we mentioned that it is inherent nature of our conscious mind to see things, perceive things in this world in dualistic way, always with the opposite polarities. And then we mentioned that just by thinking, just by changing our thinking pattern, we can also transcend this non-dualistic view, or the dualistic view, or dualistic way of thinking. But it is an artificial fix to the dualistic view. It is an artificially created way of thinking. The real non-dualistic view, the near real non-dualistic thinking, will only come to a person by uncovering the true nature of our mind. So this is what we discuss as the second point. Only by uncovering the fruition mind, or the purity of your mind, or the light of your mind, one can bring the real non-dual sense to all three layers of our mind. So we mentioned that in general sense, mind is taken as a chain of thoughts, or the thought process. But the mind is more complicated than that if you take the entire structure, because more and more we go deeper into the deeper layers of our mind, we uncover other possible states. So likewise, by doing meditation, we can uncover the true nature of our mind, or the fruition states, and then this fruition state will bring a significant shift to our consciousness. It is an irreversible shift to our consciousness, and this irreversible shift actually bring the real non-dualistic sense, the real non-dualistic view to our mind. So this is something that we have to grasp from the content of this video. Well, then the next question is, sometimes when you are, let's say, in the middle of your evolutionary process, let's say when you are in the middle of your spiritual practice, you will stumble upon or you will be given test by the nature or by the universe to see whether you really understand the burden of the duality. So I have a very nice example that I'm taking from the Sri Lankan history, where it's an old temple, an ancient ruin, and the entrance of this temple is really beautiful, in a way that if you look at this temple from distance, it has a very nice view, as you can see in this image. And the middle path is the path that is followed by Buddha, and to the left hand side you have a shrine It's like a shrine devoted to a god. Well, not the Abrahamic god. It's for a local god. And then there's another shrine on the right hand side, and that is devoted for the devil. So people who want good things in their life, people who want to wish good things for themselves and for others, they will go to the left hand shrine. So that is the good side. On the right hand side, we have a being that is dwelling in the dark realms, or the darker lower astral realms, and that is where people go if they want to curse on other people, if they want bad things to happen to other people, and if they want to use occult powers and then curse on their enemies, they go to the right hand side. So this left hand shrine and the right hand shrine, so both of these shrines represents the duality. So depending on their preference, you can go to one of the shrines, but unfortunately these days most of the Sri Lankans actually go to the right hand one, because of their the mindset and the way of thinking. But at least if you're, let's say, if you're a good person, if you're if you're perhaps you are not interested in spirituality, you don't want to undertake any spiritual journey, but still you can be a good person to the society, then you would never go to the right hand side wishing ill upon other people. But then this is a nice depiction for the duality. And right in the middle is where we see the pagoda, or the chaitya. That's where we usually store the relic of Buddha. But then in this middle path, you see also a Buddha statue standing tall, and that signifies the path that was taken by Buddha, which is the middle road. So this middle path is not falling to the good side or the divine side, neither falling to the bad side or the devil side. So what does it essentially mean? It means Buddha is the being who transcended both of these polarities, or the Buddha is the being who transcended both of these dualities. So this depiction is a nice teaching for us to understand that Buddha's middle path, or middle path that we find in any spiritual tradition, is understanding of the duality, and also surpassing, going beyond the duality. I think this type of teaching is not only available in Buddhism. Even if you look at the Christianity in certain contexts in the Bible, if I'm not mistaken, even when I was reading the Bible, I found a passage saying that, I think God has given a choice for people who are leaving Israel, and the choice was they can choose either the left-hand side road or the right-hand side road, to save their lives from the invaders. But then most of the people actually have chosen one of the sides. But I think spiritually advanced people, I think they got the message that they chose the middle path. So that's the bottom line of this depiction I want to highlight. So this is something that also you need to understand about the duality. But if you're specifically working on, let's say, the Buddhist path, understanding the duality is not a big deal. However, this type of situation, you will stumble upon this type of situation while you also have some challenges. Perhaps you are suffering from something else, and then with that suffering emerges the difficulty of choosing a path. With this suffering emerges the choice. So that is where we usually the time as spiritual practitioners struggle. So remember, if you are an ambitious star seed, and if you are taking a less travel spiritual path, then of course you will encounter these type of dualities. However, it would become a personal challenge because it will not come alone. It will come also accompanied. It will also accompany some personal challenges and suffering. So to make your decision, taking your decision even more difficult. So I will give you a particular example that becomes a really personal challenging situation for the truth seeker when he is stuck with the duality. So suppose that there's a truth seeker who is actually like an ambitious starseed and who is aspiring for the highest truth. So then, as I mentioned earlier, she or he is traveling on a less traveled spiritual path. So then that person has to uncover what is actually before this practitioner, because for less traveled spiritual paths, usually the instructions are not given to that person, so the person has to find the truth by themselves. So suppose that we are working on a similar path, and then the practitioner will come across or will be given a choice to be made. So then they will come across, let's say, a dualistic situation where they have to make a choice. So they can either choose the left hand side, so which is showing perhaps the right path, or they can choose the right hand side. That could also be a viable option. But the thing is, how to make the decision if you are in a really personal challenging situation while you are presented with a duality. So you have to make the choice, and the choice also has to be right. As I mentioned earlier, if you are a truth seeker who is actually aspiring for the highest truth, then you need to have freedom, and also you need to have free will to take decisions consciously, so that you also don't know what is the right path, and due to the given circumstances and due to your personal situation, you can select one specific path. However, usually in this type of situation, depending on your the level of your spiritual evolution, you might also encounter different kind of obstacles, attacks from the universe. So we have also this thing called the hyperdimensional matrix, where usually the practitioner or the truth seeker will encounter and meet different kind of challenges on the path. Some of these challenges can appear as attacks from high dimensions, and these attacks perhaps are happening or occurring to the practitioner to steer this practitioner in the right direction, or sometimes these attacks also can happen or take place to suppress the practitioner, to suppress the truth seeker. So we don't really know the real purpose of this attack, but on a less traveled path, it is highly likely that you will encounter this duality. You will be presented this duality, while at the same time you are also under an attack. So for an example, in this very example, you have an occult related parasitic attack, let's say to your head, that is affecting your thought process and consciousness. And at the same time, your, let's say, the sexual center or the sexual energy center is also being controlled or manipulated by the hyperdimensional forces. So in such a situation, if you don't know how to protect yourself, and if you don't know the real nature of the attack, and also the countermeasures to overcome the situation, then you will become really helpless. And at that particular dualistic situation, you cannot easily make a choice. And then because you don't have any idea what is happening, you will run in different directions. Perhaps you can take the easiest one and then work along that path, and then try to understand what is happening. And if it is not succeeding, then you can take the right, the left, the other path, and then see what is happening. So likewise, when a person is presented with a duality, if the path is less traveled, often the duality comes with certain situations, certain obstacles, certain hindrances. So that is why making a choice when the practitioner is presented with the duality is really difficult. So this is one of the prime examples that I can give how the decision making in a dualistic situation is really challenging or arduous due to other personal circumstances and hyperdimensional energetical obstacles. Right. So up to this point, we have discussed about the influence of duality in three aspects. First is the dualistic nature of our conscious mind, where we are struggling to make decisions based on the external information we have with our conscious mind. Second, how the meditative experience or samadhi, or what we call, what we refer to as the fruition mind, is affecting our way of thinking, our the perception on the worldly things, and also the circumstances around us. The third one is how when you are working on a less traveled spiritual path, how the duality is affecting and how the duality is presented to the practitioner with a challenging situation. And then in the next topic, we're going to talk about how the duality is working in the universal level, in the universal sense. Now, as I mentioned earlier, in that particular example that I gave around the ancient ruins or the ancient temple in Sri Lanka, I mentioned that Buddha was the master or the spiritual teacher who transcended the duality, who went beyond the good and bad. So what does it exactly mean? So essentially, the Buddha nature or the state of being a Buddha is beyond the good and bad. So if you take the universal structure, if you look at the existence and the universe, that is constructed of both the duality. At the beginning of the video, I presented the yin and yang combination and the harmony between these two states. So that is the essential nature of this vast cosmos and the universe. So the practitioner who went through both of these extreme levels, the practitioner who understood both of these polarities and went beyond these two extreme levels, can transcend these polarities and find the true nature, the ultimate nature of our mind. So that's the duality of the universe in Buddhist perspective, in the Buddhist teaching, how it is given in Buddhist teaching. When it comes to Abrahamic teaching, we also say that God or the godly nature is also well beyond the duality. Why? Because God, as the prime creator of this universe, to govern this universe, creates both the dark side and the light side of this universe. So even in Abrahamic stories, the stories that we find in Abrahamic traditions, we say that the Satan or the devil actually was a creation of the God. So the God had created angels, light beings, to support the creation in the light aspect, and at the same time God also had created Satan, like the darker being, to support the darker side of the universe or the destruction of the universe. So likewise, the darker side and the light side, both of these sides coexist together. For an example, if you take even certain findings, inventions in this world, so for an example like dynamite, Um, so the one who actually founded dynamite, he didn't have any intention to bring destruction to this universe. He was actually basically doing some experiments around chemical compounds and chemical substances, and at the beginning it was a great finding. However, this great finding was influential for many other lateral or subsequent scientific findings, but at the same time, it was also a reason to find the dynamite or the explosive, to develop explosives and also develop bombs and many other nuclear weapons. So, see, even that scientific finding was influencing this universe or this existence in both ways. So, we see the good side and the bad side. We see the same thing in creation. So, the Buddha is the spiritual teacher or the leader or the practitioner who sees through both of these sides, and then without sticking into one side, he understands that both of these light and darkness coexist together, and therefore at his final realization he has to transcend this duality. So that is understanding the duality in a universal sense, or at the level of the universe or the creation. So one could say, for an example, a practitioner or a person who has a similar capacity of a great bodhisattva like Gautam Buddha, perhaps he is the only individual who sees the entire creation within his consciousness, who sees all the extremes, who experiences the entire spectrum of the universe, where he is exposed to both light beings and dark beings. And then finally, only that kind of practitioner can understand everything is creation of our own mind. Right. So how our mind responds to duality? What is the nature of our consciousness and nature of our mind when it encounters or when it stumbles upon a dualistic situation? In Buddhism, we have a nice term called the disease of samsara, the disease that is caused by the samsara. So in my humble opinion, this essentially means the never-ending thought process that is incurred by the duality, the influence of the duality on the consciousness. So for an example, when we encounter a dualistic situation similar to what I presented earlier, where you have a choice to be made, but at the same time you are under attack and you are influenced by many different other scenarios and personal circumstances, and due to this reason you cannot easily make this choice. So as a result, you have to undergo suffering. So this suffering will emerge to you as a never-ending thought process, one thought after the other, and then this will go on like a thought chain. As you can see in this image, it's like an electrical signal, a randomly generated electrical signal that has no specific shape, and you have these signal spikes everywhere. So that is the nature of our consciousness with respect to the dualistic situation we experience. And in Buddhism, we often in Buddhism we have this practice called the Eightfold Noble Path, and the starting point or the starting limb of the Eightfold Noble Path is essentially the right view. So different people, different practitioners have different opinions about the right view. Some people say that the right view comes with the faith in triple gems, faith in the religious tradition, the faith in guru, and at the same time also the belief in karma, belief in cause and effect. But in my opinion, the right view actually comes to the practitioner with understanding of the duality. So only with the understanding of the duality, one can really um, understand the true nature of the phenomenon, the true nature of their mind. As long as our mind is stuck with the duality, our consciousness is, repeating in cycles. Because of this reason, in Buddhist traditions, we say that understanding of the duality is of utmost importance, and it is in fact the starting point of our spiritual journey or the Eightfold Noble Path. Another interesting statement or an idea that usually we find in New Age spiritual movements or in secular form of spiritual practices is there's no right and wrong. Well, because with the duality and also with the concept of non-duality, we tend to think that the right and wrong views actually do not exist, and also because of this reason we tend to think that, well, we can live in any way, and whatever we do has no impact on the society and has no impact on other people. But this type of thinking is really dangerous. Why? Then people do not believe in the karma and its effect, so that they can do any harmful deed or any kind of misconduct, justifying that, okay, there is no good and bad. Perhaps, we often see in new age spiritual movements that people are just picking up these type of random topics and random ideas from, let's say, uh, different kind of secular spiritual ideas, and then they try to justify that, okay, we can just live without being worried about our life, and there is no karma, and there won't be any afterlife. But that is a wrong kind of thinking. You could be an expert in duality or non-duality, or you could be following and also like worshipping these non-dualistic teachings that emerged recently. But remember that you are still under the karma, you are still under the influence of cause and effect. So let's now summarize what we have discussed so far, and to give a summary in detail with respect to the Buddhist tradition. The Theravada Buddhism, or the early school of Buddhism, we do not discuss about the duality and non-duality in great detail. Why? Because the early school of Buddhism is dedicated for being free from suffering, and also engaging in the Eightfold Noble Path. But in my opinion, the starting point of the Eightfold Noble Path is understanding the duality. However, it has not been really emphasized in the early school of Buddhism, also in Pali Canon. However, if you look at the Mahayana tradition and also the Tantrayana tradition, we give a great emphasis to the topic duality and non-duality. I think the main reason is that the bodhisattvas are the practitioners of Mahayana and Vajrayana tradition. So they have to understand, and their understanding on this universal process and also the mechanism is, it's superior compared to the Theravada or the early school Buddhist practitioner. So that's why in both of these Mahayana and Tantrayana traditions, we discuss about these two topics in great detail. In my opinion, the Buddha has an exalted wisdom compared to a Shravaka or the disciple in the Theravada tradition. So the Buddha has this great understanding on how things work, how the illusion works, how this universal mechanism functions, and how the karma and cause and effect principle works. So this understanding, because of this understanding, Buddha's wisdom and Buddha's compassion is usually greater than a disciple. And therefore, usually Buddhas reserve these teachings, the advanced teachings, mainly for higher order disciples. So that's why I think a great detail on duality and non-duality to a great extent is usually available for bodhisattvas in other two Buddhist traditions. So from this point, we conclude our video. And if you have any feedback, and if you want to dive deeper into our findings, our teachings, you can also read our blog that is given in the YouTube description section. And thank you.